this is our second speaker of the year for the Young Politics Club, and our first speaker was the President Judge of the Montgomery County Court of Common Pleas in October. But today we have with us Ken Krawchuk. He is the Libertarian candidate for governor this year, so if you're 18, you'll see him on the ballot, and hopefully, yeah, Libertarian. We'll talk about that. But this will be a good opportunity to listen in on a new perspective. Maybe you don't know what a libertarian is and you'll hear about it for the first time today, or you'll just get to hear a different point of view. So, Mr. Krawchuk.
Thank you very much, Jared. Thank you all for taking the time off, especially since today is such an important day for the Philadelphia area. Congratulations to the Eagles, of course. What I'd like to do is introduce myself, introduce my party, and talk about a few of the issues that are pretty big for the coming race. Sound good? Cool. My name is Ken Krawchuk. I was born and raised in a row home in North Philadelphia, Einstein Hospital. Went to Cardinal Area High School. I was telling Ms. Gale that my freshman year we had 7,100 kids in this school. Quite a big class. I thought this place was big. They're all very big. My wife Roberta and I have been married now for just past 40 years. We had our 40th anniversary last year. And you know, our kids pick on us. They say, all of our friends' parents are divorced, separated. What's wrong with you guys? Old-fashioned, I guess. She hasn't gotten tired of me, I think is what it is. Professionally, I'm an information technology entrepreneur. Business architect is the term I like best. I started off my IT career at the age of 17 when I was a senior in high school, doing COBOL contract work for the Bank of New Jersey. And now I'm working at Educational Testing Service. I'm sure you know who they are, the SAT people. I keep their network of international test centers testing. I also hold 3 United States patents related to database theory. If there are any IT geeks in the audience, maybe after we can sit down and compare notes. It's pretty cool. I've been running my own company now since 1988, Information Technology Consulting. So I've personally created jobs. I know what it takes to run a company. Understand the capitalist system. I'm also a Toastmaster. How many people are familiar with Toastmasters? A couple of you. Toastmasters is an international organization whose mission is to provide a supportive environment to learn public speaking and leadership skills. I was talking to Jared just beforehand. When I first joined Toastmasters, I used to get scared to death to speak in public. Most people get butterflies. I would get pterodactyls. I remember going to see my congressman, and I went to ask him about the space station. I'm a huge space buff. And halfway through the question, I got an asthma attack and I couldn't talk. I had to sit down. Very embarrassing. But Toastmasters gave me the ability, the confidence, and the competence to speak in public. But highly recommend it, especially at your age. Go to Toastmasters.org, put in your zip code. There are 13,000 clubs around the world. There's got to be one nearby. I'm also an author. I should have brought in a copy of my book, Atlas Snubbed. It's a parody sequel to Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. Anybody read Atlas Shrugged? Yeah, it's a big book, 1,200 pages. And my sequel corrects a lot of the mistakes she made. Ayn Rand is a philosophical father or mother of the Libertarian Party. So that's enough about me for the moment. So I'm a family man, businessman, inventor, author, Toastmaster, but most importantly, I'm a libertarian. We libertarians are different from the 2 old parties because we are the party of principle. Every law we support, every law we oppose can all be traced back to one central idea. The idea that your life is yours, that your property is yours, that you have the inalienable right to live your life your way without interference, provided only you respect the rights and property of others. That's it. That's what it means to be a libertarian. Your life, your way. It's the golden rule on a political level. And the public has reacted very strongly to this message. Since our founding in 1971, we have grown to become the 3rd largest party, hands down, outnumbering all the other third parties put together. That's in terms of registrations, in terms of elected officials, in terms of media, in terms of just general membership, and in terms of belief systems in the United States. By every measure, we're number 3, and we're growing. Let me ask you a question. How many of you think that you should be able to live your own life your own way, provided you respect others? Who believes that? We're all libertarian. You may be registered Democrat, registered Republican, not registered at all. Maybe you're an anarchist, I don't know. But if you believe that you have the right to live your life your way, if you believe in the political golden rule, you're a libertarian. Small L libertarian. Capital L is people who are members of the party. And I ask, right, virtually everybody believes that we should be able to live our own lives our own way if we respect others. That's why we're growing. Continue to grow. So there's a little bit about the party. What issues are important in the coming election? Number one issue is always, always, always taxes. Taxes. Well, who thinks taxes are too low? Is my voice projecting? Do I have to go back to Toastmasters? No, nobody thinks taxes are low. They're not. In fact, they're at historic highs. Do you know that the cost of government in Pennsylvania has been rising at more than 3 times the rate of inflation for over 50 years? It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat in there, it doesn't matter if it's a Republican in there. Up, up, up. Right now it's reached the point where 80% of Pennsylvania's budget is giveaway programs. Only 20% actually pays for the valid functions of government. And it's getting continually worse. I got good news though. As governor, I can do something about that. I have here my job description, the Constitution for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. How many have read this? Hello, how many? Geez, don't they teach? Isn't this a state-run school? Isn't this a school paid for by the state? Do you know that unelected board of educators in Harrisburg tells you what you're going to learn, what you're not going to learn, who can teach, who can't teach? They can control everything. How many days of school you're there? And with all that power, they don't teach you how your government works? Dude. If I was on Mythbusters or something, there's a story here. And I could go on about some of the things that are in here. There's some wonderful things in here. Let me get back on track, though. There's one thing in here. In Article 9, it talks about the powers of the governor. And one power the governor has is the power of the veto. Pennsylvania government costs have been growing for 50 years or more. I'm going to stop that. I have the veto power. So if they ever try to pass a new tax increase, veto. If they try to increase something else, veto, 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 right down the line. So I will be able to hold the line on the growth of the cost of government in Pennsylvania, single-handedly. I don't need anybody's permission. It's in the Constitution. Not only can I hold the line on the power of government, on the cost of government, I can actually push it back. Because the Pennsylvania governor has something that the president does not have. The line item veto. That means I can go through and look for individual little things that I don't like. Like, say, the Milk Marketing Board sets a minimum price for milk. Give me a break. How communistic is that? We've got state police who have an illegal registry of gun owners. Can't do that. Gone. DUI checkpoints. Your papers, please. That's like Nazi Germany. Do you know the FBI says that random roving patrols are much more effective than DUI checkpoints? Why do we do them? I could talk about that for a while. I graduated from the Abington Citizens Police Academy several years ago. I personally worked DUI checkpoints. The first night I was there, we hauled away 8 people in irons, and not one of them was drunk. They all walked in. How you doing? I could go on about that for a while. We're taking innocent people, we're putting them in cages. Line item veto, gone, 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 gone. So getting back to the law on taxes, I can stop the growth of the cost of government in Pennsylvania, and by vetoing all of these pork barrel junkets, all of these special interest things, everyone gone, 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 and nobody can stop me. Power is given to me by the Constitution. I could talk about taxes for a long time too. I'll try and stay general, and then I'll open it up to questions. You can tell me what's really important on your mind. But I'm going to be able to have a significant impact on the cost of government in Pennsylvania. Another big thing is education. Obviously, it's got to be the biggest item in the Pennsylvania budget. About 40% of the Pennsylvania budget goes to education. Right now, with due respect to our teacher and our guest here, I don't think we're on the right track with education. Because right now, education is expensive. It's a monopoly in Pennsylvania. Do you know 95% of the kids in Pennsylvania all go to the same school system? The government school system. Virtual monopoly. Like any monopoly, costs are high, choice is low, and the quality, not necessarily the best. What I would like to do as governor is I would like to end that monopoly. And the way I would do it, of course, is to introduce competition. Because competition drives down prices, increases choice. Look what's happened with the phones. You know when, do I have it with me? No, I don't. Yes, I do. When I was a kid, everything was a landline. Everything was tied to a wire. 10 years ago, this was the standard phone. I still carry it today because that's all I do is I make phone calls. When I was a kid, Ma Bell was regulated. You had to get government permission to put in a line, take out a line, whatever it may be. And now, you got more power in your back pocket than they had on the Apollo capsules when they went to the moon. This is what competition can do, and this is what I want to bring to education. And the way I'm going to bring it into education is to bring somebody into the equation who has been missing for far too long. The parents. Remember that? Parents. Specifically, what I would like to see is I would like your parents to be able to choose any government school for your child that they want. And the funding which would have gone to the local school will follow you to the school of your parents' choice. That way, good schools get more funding and grow. And the bad schools, they get shut down for lack of funding. So for the same educational dollar, we can improve education dramatically in Pennsylvania. And when I say improve, I don't mean what I think is an improvement, what you think is an improvement, what Ms. Gale thinks is an improvement. I'm talking about improvement in the eyes of the people who matter most, the parents, not some unelected Board of Education at Harrisburg, which ignores certain subjects. So we can improve education. There's a lot more I can say about education. The hard part up here is there's so many things that I could say, so many ways that your life, your way, can improve life in Pennsylvania in general. I'll wait for the Q&A. We'll go off in details then. So what do we got? We did taxes, which is always number one in everybody's mind. Education, of course, is very, very important because it's one of the biggest items in the Pennsylvania budget. Third one I want to touch on is crime. And we're out in the suburbs here. I'm in Abington Township. Pretty nice area. I assume it's a nice area. It's still nice. We used to do cow tipping at night. A study by the Commonwealth Foundation, a Harrisburg think tank, found that 95% of all crimes are committed by only 5% of the criminals. So again, using the power granted to me by my job description, what I'm going to do my first day in office is I am going to end parole for violent criminals. I think it's insane to let these people out of jail, especially after we finally got them into our convoluted, unfair criminal justice system. When I'm governor, they will serve every day of their sentence. Now, there are a couple people who shouldn't be there, and we'll look at those on a one-by-one case. It's just not a blanket thing. But if you're a bad guy who shot 15 people, you're not getting parole after 10 years. You're going to be in there for life. When they say life, it's going to be life. So guaranteed to reduce crime, right? 95% of the criminals, they'll be in jail. So it's going to be a safer Pennsylvania. And again, I don't need anybody's permission to do this. It's in my job description. People say, oh, Ken, you're going to be the only libertarian there. Doesn't matter. A lot of things in here, powers that are granted to the libertarian, or whoever the governor may be. Now, when I say that, people say, where are you going to put all these bad guys, Ken? You got to build new prisons? You know, we've got a new Graterford that's going up, what, maybe 10 miles from here, 15 miles from here? It's not open yet. It was 2 years late. But again, I'm going off on a tangent here. What am I going to do? Build more prisons? No. No. In fact, we can reduce the size of prisons. Because there are people there who are in prison who don't belong there. Specifically, I'm talking about pot smokers. Or any nonviolent drug user. Right now, we're at the point where these prisons are so overcrowded, there are court-mandated caps. They're at the point now where they're releasing murderers and rapists from our overcrowded prisons to make room for pot-smoking Grateful Dead fans. That's insane! Who would want to see a pot smoker in jail instead of a criminal? Oh, you're not listening to me yet. No, nobody does. But the Democrats and Republicans are doing this all the time. Well, my first day in office, again, using the power granted to me by the Constitution, I'm promising my first day in office, I'm going to pardon every single non-violent drug offender. Day one. If you were just kicking back, smoking a joint, watching The Simpsons, and got busted, you have a get-out-of-jail-free card from this governor candidate. They don't belong in jail. They need help. Can you imagine a heroin addict going up to the police saying, "Oh, excuse me, I'm a heroin addict, would you help me?" Yeah, sure, get in the cell. It's not what we want. Governor Wolf, what was it, maybe 3 weeks ago? He declared an opioid crisis in Pennsylvania. We don't have an opioid crisis. We have a war on drugs crisis. Do you know why people are dying from overdoses? Because there's no quality control. They got that, what's that stuff? Fentanyl? Fentanyl, thank you. I'm not a heroin addict. I don't know. Fentanyl. People have put too much in there. Why is that? That's like if you go down to the, oh, you guys don't drink yet. You don't think you drink. You go down to the state store and you buy yourself, a bottle of wine. You're not expecting it to be moonshine. That's what's happening right now. And the reason why it's happening, why there's no quality control, is because drugs are illegal. The guy at the bar, he's not going to sell you any alcohol. He's going to lose his bar. The guy at 7-Eleven, he's not going to sell you cigarettes. He's going to lose his job. But the guy in the corner's got nothing to lose. He's already outside the system. He's an outlaw. What we have to do is decriminalize, legalize all these drugs. Other states have done it. I was in Washington State. I call them free states now. They call them dispensaries. Every couple blocks there's another marijuana dispensary. And you know what? There's no random fighting in the streets. Society hasn't collapsed. In fact, drug use has gone down. Portugal took a bigger step. They decriminalized all drugs, period, across the board, from heroin all the way down to lollipops. I don't know, it's blue, I guess. Whatever it is. And you know what happened to their drug usage? Went down. Emergency room entrances, down, 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 down. So when Governor Wolf says we have an opioid crisis, he's wrong. Flat out wrong. I admire the guy for the public service that he's given to the state, but I just don't agree with all of his stands. And this one is just the worst. Because we have a war on drugs crisis, and it's time to end this insane war on drugs. And when I'm governor, I'm going to do just that. Anytime a cop arrests somebody for any kind of drug possession, I'm going to pardon them. Pardon, pardon, pardon. Now, of course, if they robbed from somebody or dealt drugs to kids or something like that, yeah, they're going to stay safely in prison. But other than that, the day I'm elected, the war on drugs is going to end. I can go on, as if you can't tell, right? Put me on a soapbox, give me my favorite subject, and I'll go on and on. Let me open up to questions. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think it's wise to equate drugs like opioids, especially like drugs from big pharma and cocaine, and drugs that lead to much higher rates of overdoses than marijuana, which has really not been proven to be as addictive, and to pardon/decriminalize them at the same rate?
Understood. There's no question. Drugs are bad. Certain drugs are worse than other drugs. But the war on drugs takes that bad situation and makes it much worse. They're taking a social problem and turning it into a criminal problem, where we now have, I think it's like almost 20% of our prison population are there for drug offenses. Right? That's a lot of murderers that we can fill up that space with instead. The drugs are bad. We should treat them as a social ill, not as a criminal ill. And a lot of these things, well, as I said, the overdose problem would go away because you're not going to have the impurities. And people are taking OxyContins. You know, when I was back there in college, what was it? Quaaludes was a big thing back then. And I knew people who did Quaaludes, and one of them got real sick and everything, and people were going around saying, "Don't take more than 4. Remember what happened to Frank?" It would settle out. Right now we're up here, damage to society, the damage to people, I want to get it down to here. I'm not going to be able to save all, but I'm going to save more. Good question. Oh, you want to follow up?
Oh, yeah, well, this was on a different issue, something you mentioned earlier about creating competition in the school system.
Mhm.
Would you do that primarily through charter schools, or would you encourage private schools? And how would you plan on regulating quality of education and access to education, especially in areas that have a higher population and less choice? Because obviously, charter schools and private schools will go to areas with more money in hopes of getting, you know, more money from wealthier parents in suburbs, as opposed to investing in inner city areas where parents have less to offer.
Well, the short answer is I won't. Because, as I said before, I'm not going to judge the quality of education by what I think is important, and what you think is important, what he thinks is important. That's not important. What's important is in the minds of the parents. So the parents may be teaching kids things that you don't want them to believe, or things that you'll be teaching your kids that those same people don't want you to be teaching. Instead, if you give parents the choice, they could send their kids to whatever school more closely aligns with what they want to do. If that doesn't work, take one bigger step back. I'm a huge fan of homeschooling. Has anybody been homeschooled at one point? Then you know what I'm talking about. Do you know what I found about homeschooled kids? They're the first person to ask a question when you go to a meeting. They're more articulate, they're more outspoken, they're more intelligent, and I assume you're not an exception.
I hope not.
In Toastmasters, we have something called youth leadership, and I did a session of 12-year-olds. Most of them were homeschooled. I asked my first question, virtually every hand in the room went up. The two hands that didn't go up, they were the government school kids. But homeschooling would be the way out of it. Now, when you talk about the inner city, I already gave the plan for that. Oh, I didn't finish that. This will help the inner city. Right? Everybody now wants to go to Souderton Area because it's a great school. So all of a sudden, North Penn, you hear the echo, there's nobody there. They have to shut it down. But there's so many people who want to come here, you don't have room for them all. So what you do here is you take the same administrators, the same teachers who make it such a big draw, and you take over North Penn. And now, I know it's not a ghetto, call that inner city, right? North Penn's the inner city, I'm going to get in trouble for that one. So now, you've reached into the inner city of Montgomery County, whatever, taken over North Penn. So now, not only does the Souderton area have good education, so does North Penn. And all for the same educational dollar. So we're rescuing the schools. Now, you had like 4 questions in there. Did I hit them all?
Yeah, well, one of the issues with bigger schools like North Penn is a huge school right now, and part of the reason that quality of education goes down is because they're administrating so many students. So if Souderton grows to expand for the bigger draw, wouldn't, I mean, just if we look at like the historic trend of education is like when schools get larger, they reach a point where they're not as effective. And so if Souderton was also educating all of the kids from North Penn,
Correct.
Wouldn't the quality of education drop and we'd be in the same point that we are now?
Depends how you do it. What you guys are experiencing here is called the Prussian model of education. That's where you sit and I talk. You take notes, you listen, or else you're in trouble. That's the Prussian model. What if we tried a different model? So many others, top of my head, Montessori, homeschool. There are all sorts of other special educations. I'm an IT guy, I'm not an educator. But when I'm governor, my Secretary of Education, I have a couple already picked out. They know their stuff. They're the ones that I would rely on. Where was I? I was going off on a tangent there. I don't know what the model would be. But right now, there's a monopoly. And the regulations that you're talking about are stifling that. It wasn't until about maybe 10 years ago, 8 years ago, that homeschooling was finally acceptable. That they finally laid out a path where you could homeschool your kids without being constantly nitpicked by administrators who aren't part of your kids' education. To answer your question, I'll go on.
Sure, yes.
Thank you. Let's let somebody else get one in. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the state budget and how it's growing at a pretty alarming rate, which I show sympathy for, especially with the rising cost of our debt. But you mentioned handout programs as being one of the largest consumers of the budget. Under a government controlled by you, what would those programs look like?
What I would like to see, well, let me take a little bit of a step back. In my mind, the purpose of government, grand purpose, is to protect the rights and property of the citizens. Everything else after that is an argument over by special interests. What I would like to see, well, let me step back again. There's a lot of people who need help in the state. Seniors need help with their drug prescriptions. Special needs kids need help with their special needs. There's all sorts of needy people. These are not things that should be taken care of by government. Because it teaches us, am I allowed to mention the Bible?
Yes.
Thank you. The Bible teaches us that the poor you will always have with you. When you take the power to tax, which is an unlimited reach into your pocket, digging all the way down to your ankles if they want to, they'll never have enough money. So that's what's been happening in Pennsylvania. It's going up and up and up and up for the social side. Things that the state should not be involved in. What I would do is I would separate society and state. Easy thing to do, and that's why I always have my book. That's the point of my novel. Separation of society and state. Instead of forcing people at the point of a gun to pay for Granny's prescriptions, we do it voluntarily. Okay? Same thing, special needs kids, voluntary contributions. Or the government would hold a bake sale, or a telethon, or something like that. And if there's not enough money to go around, well, we do just what you and I do if you don't have enough money. Prioritize, you decide what you're going to do. But I wouldn't trust government to do this prioritization. I wouldn't trust government to say who gets how much money. Instead, I would create an entirely separate organization. And in a fit of originality, I called it society. Society would look just like government. It would have a constitution, it would have a congressman, a state house at the federal level. At the state level, there'd be a governor of society, a state house of society. Locally, there'd be a mayor of society. Same constitution. Copy one over to the other. But the only difference, the major difference between society and government is that society does not have the coercive power of taxation. So that way you could help Granny get those drugs. But, again, you have to ask people. There's a law, I can't remember the name of it, it hasn't been passed yet. It was done in Arizona, and I should memorize what the name is. What it does is it allows each individual who pays taxes to earmark some of their taxes for what they consider to be a worthwhile social goal. It could be your local flop house, it could be, I don't know, civil defense, it could be prescriptions for Granny, or whatever it may be. But you can choose up to how much taxes you would pay, or some lower limit. I think Arizona limits it at $500. So that way it's you deciding who's going to get this money. How many welfare cheats are there out there? Anybody know any welfare cheats personally? I know a couple of them. You wouldn't be able to cheat, because people would know that. Oh yeah, the place is just fun cheaters. We don't want to do that. So that's what I do. I separate society and state, uncouple the coercive power of taxation from helping people, and then help people with the budgets as best we can. And if anyone wants a copy of my book, I'd be happy to give them one. PDF, Kindle, Nook, whatever you like. Just get your contact information to, how do you like to be addressed?
Mrs. Gale, it's fine.
Mrs.?
Yes.
Oh. Very good. A lot of people, never mind. I'm proud of the way you're doing it. Just let Mrs. Gale know, and I'll be able to get, and what format you prefer, and I'd be happy to get you a copy. And you read about how to separate society and state, how you run an entire society off of that. Answer the question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
What's your view on environmental issues and like regulation and that?
Well, I believe you have the right to live your life your way without interference, provided only that you respect the rights and property of others. And I say that 1,000 times. Your life, your way. I'm like a Burger King ad.
But do you believe that people are naturally inclined to help themselves, and if they're helping themselves?
No.
No, you don't
No,
believe that?
because you have that right to live your life your way and help yourself, provided you respect the rights and property of others. So now, if you're digging or fracking or whatever it is, and your junk's blowing onto my property, what I would do is I would treat pollution as a trespass. And that way all the laws against trespassing would now apply to people who stuff leaked, blew, or whatever. They would even take care of bright lights shining in your window, or a stereo too loud at 3 in the morning. Because now their junk is leaking over, and you can treat them as a trespasser. And get an injunction, shut them down.
And then what about climate change? Because by the time we see real effects of that, it's gonna be irreversible. So if you try to prevent that now, how would that work? Because if by the time that there's real symptoms of it, and you treat it as trespassing, it's gonna be too late and the damage will be done, so how would you prevent that
Well,
from?
two answers to that. The first one is I'm running for governor of Pennsylvania, not president of the United States. There's not much I can do about that other than to encourage use of renewables, energy resources. For example, I'm a shareholder in Solar City. Truth in advertising here. So something like that, I would lean Pennsylvania in that
So
direction.
would you give tax benefits or things along that line?
I don't give tax benefits because tax code is already complicated. I just did my 1040. It's not easy. And I do my own corporate returns. It's not easy. If I were to go in there and add another chapter saying, oh, by the way, I'm not going to do that. I'm pulling things out of the tax code, so I wouldn't do tax credits. I would just reduce the cost of government overall. And something that you said leads me to think that you believe in climate change. How do you define climate change? One sentence. Yeah, climates change all the time. I was at a seminar with a meteorologist, and he said, there was this one really bad winter. We had ice all over the place. Maybe about 15 years ago. You guys don't remember it. And they asked him on the air, and they said, why is it so bad? He thought for a minute. He said, you know, somewhere on the planet, every day there's a weather record being set. If one is being set here, we shouldn't be surprised. Second thing is, my degree's in physics. I went to St. Joe's University. And I personally looked at this. When somebody says, oh, climate change, I go and read the original report, find out what it was. In my opinion, they don't know. There's not enough information to say whether the climate is going up, going down. When I was your age, global cooling was the big thing. Back in the 70s, oh yeah, everything's cooling. By the time 2000 comes around, it's going to be an ice age. We don't know. My mind, my educated guess, is that the jury is still out as to what's going on. But I'll quote Elon Musk, one of my personal heroes. He said, we're pumping 10 trillion tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every day. I don't know what's going to happen, but it doesn't sound too smart. Again, I have very little control over that. Very good question, though. You're thinking globally. I like that. Okay. Somebody else who hasn't asked a question yet? Yes, sir.
You made a statement that you feel in this area that there isn't much of a opioid crisis.
Correct.
Are you really sure about that?
Yes.
Because there's
Next question.
from living years.
I'm pretty sure about
Yeah,
it.
it's fine, it's fine. There's a substantial amount of overdoses that occur, and I know a few people that have died from overdose.
And me?
I wouldn't really say that's such a substantial statement to put on this area. And also, with the climate thing, I'm not really a big fan of climate change, but wouldn't you say it's fair to agree that with all the things that we have nowadays and what we're creating, wouldn't you put some kind of impact on the environment?
We would. Question is how much of an impact? Let me get your questions in reverse order there. One thing I'd like to see is not this annual emissions inspections on cars. Instead, I would just pick a number. We could argue about the number, 1%, 10%, 5%. We pick the 5% worst offenders, and we get them off the road. And that's it. Now, new cars are obviously more efficient, so the problem would be less and less and less with newer cars. So if we take off the bottom 5% constantly, we're guaranteed to improve that. But we're doing that from the point of view of trespass. Because now you've got a dirty car, stuff coming out the back, you're poisoning these people over here. Not good. But coming back to your comment about the opioid crisis, everybody that I know who got in trouble over these things was because they took too much, and the reason they took too much is because they weren't aware of how much they were taking. Now, if you're saying these people died of an overdose and were aware of how much they're taking, then that's a suicide.
But they weren't really aware. I mean, with
Okay.
this, you can't really like put tide over it because not everyone's going to be truthful about how many drugs they're doing which are illegal. But
I would. I used to smoke pot. And I inhaled. And I held it. But my life would have been over. They would have put me in a cage. I wouldn't be here today in front of you people. Anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. With the outlook on drugs right now is kind of, with regards to pot, is kind of a bit harsh. Putting people in prison for such a long period of time for minor amounts. Change that would be pretty good for the area.
Thank you.
But yeah, it feels like that there is a lot more going on with the opioids than we're really believing.
Maybe. I still have connections to that section of society. And I know people have been taking those things since back in high school, since high school days, and they haven't killed themselves yet. I'd have to look at the circumstances around what happened with your friends there. I'm sorry to hear that, but they could have gotten help.
Yeah.
Because you could go to an administrator and say, listen, I'm doing Quaaludes all day long, I gotta do something here, and they'll help you. I'm not gonna call the cops. My Abington Township, the police there, they had a same kind of an idea saying, we gotta stop this. They started the zero tolerance policy. Somebody's caught with drugs, cops would take them out of the school. Putting children in prison. Anyway. How? You will be started. Did I answer your question? Okay, thanks. I want to come back to you.
What do you think is the biggest obstacle for the Libertarian Party in getting offices and such?
Ooh. Article 1, Section 5. It says, all elections shall be free and equal. This will be the third time that I've run for governor, assuming I go on the ballot. Last time I had to collect 21,000 signatures to get my name on the ballot. Do you know how many Ed Rendell needed? I ran against Ed Rendell. 2,000. 2,000 versus 21,000. Plus I had to get a cushion because some of them would be found invalid. That's number one. The ballot access laws. They just won't let us on. Worse, when I ran in 2002, that was the last time, I am, by the way, the last third-party or independent candidate for governor of Pennsylvania. When I ran in 2002, there was nobody since then. It's at 16 years now. Do you know why? Because when people turned in, the guy who ran after me, he turned in his signatures. They got rid of him, bad, stupid things, bad. Sign where you print, should print where you sign, stuff like that. They reduced him below the minimum, they kicked him off the ballot. You didn't have enough signatures. And then they fined him $80,000 for Department of State costs, handwriting analysis costs, postage, lawyer fees, all these other things. I was thinking of running. It's in 2006, I was thinking of running for U.S. Senate. I can't do that. They're going to fine me $80,000. They're going to take away my house. My wife's going to divorce me. 3 times we made an assault. I was a plaintiff on a lawsuit 3 times. Last summer, we won. Finally, we won. They found those fines unconstitutional, which is why I'm back. Because now they can't take away my house. I'm going to stay married. Woo! Fines are gone, and the judge says, 21,000, that's stupid. It's a variable number, by the way. It's a formula. Some years it goes up and down, up and down, up and down. Last year it was 16,000 for the judge races. This year it's 22,000. But the judge says, no, that's ridiculous. 5,000. It's like, wait a minute. It says here, equal. The judge is like, shut up, 5,000. It's like, all right, 5,000. That's better than 21,000, right? They don't want the competition. Do you know, last time I looked, 38%, last state house races, 38% of them were unopposed. Called more than a third, almost what, 2/5. Somebody, what's the next fraction after that? I don't know. Who's the math guy? Yeah. 2/5. 2/5 of them are going unopposed. Why? Because it's impossible to get on the ballot. And it's even worse for the lower voters. It's only worked for statewide, down to 5,000. Only worked for them. You want to run for Congress? They need 500 signatures. We need 3,000. Right? Stupid. And it goes all the way down the line. I ran for my local town council. They needed 5 signatures. I needed 17. Anyway, what's the biggest threat? They're protecting their monopoly, and they're using the force of law to do it. And they're violating the Constitution. You said I was going to talk about this, and you were right. You had a question? Yes.
So as of right now, I believe Pennsylvania National Guard, I believe they're the 2nd largest in the whole country. And as of right now, I believe the number is that more are being deployed than those who aren't, and most of those people are in college.
Mhm.
Do you have any opinion on that, how most people that are sending out are in college and it's supposed to be paid for them, and here they are, and they might get shot in the front line, and that's kind of the end of it, or?
When I was your age, Sonny, they had something called slave armies. I'm sorry, they called it the draft. Where they would pull people right out of school and send them over to Vietnam to get killed. Happened all the time. Fortunately for me, I got a medical deferment. I have bad feet, I have bad hearing, I get asthma attacks when I'm talking about things like that. So I was 4F, which was the classification for people who are not there. I'm 100% behind you. We should not be pulling kids out of there. I like the idea of a volunteer army. I'd love to go ahead at the draft and went to a volunteer army. Because that way people who want to do that, they can. My brother was a lifetime Navy guy, 22 years in the Navy. So I really appreciate all that. But the person who's in charge of Pennsylvania National Guard is the governor.
Yep.
So the governor just has to say, no thanks, we're going to leave our students here. We're going to train them here because they're very important Pennsylvania emergencies. I was out camping in Hurricane Agnes. Now, you guys are too young. Remember Hurricane Agnes? Devastated Pennsylvania. I was out camping. I couldn't get home for 2 weeks because the roads are washed down. That's the kind of stuff we need our National Guard for. But I wouldn't want to see them deployed. I don't agree with most of that. I agree with Ron Paul on this. I think we go over there, we meddle around, we get blowback. All right, let's go bomb Libya. Oh, all right, we're going to fly airplanes into your World Trade Center. What goes around comes around, right? So no, I would not allow the feds to do that. In fact, let me go a little bit broader than that. I would broaden that to say that anything the federal government comes in here to do, they better have. Does he? Does he? I don't. My federal constitution usually lives right here. It doesn't. If it's not in the federal constitution, they can't do it. The 9th and 10th Amendments to the Constitution, who can tell me what they are? Generally, all right, go for it.
I got the 10th Amendment. That all rights and power is not listed in the Constitution to the federal government, reserved to the states and the people.
That's it. That's the best one. 9th says, if it's not mentioned in the Constitution, doesn't mean it's not there. But 10th is the big one, saying that if it's not in the Constitution, the feds can't do it. So not only would I look at that, they can do it. The feds can take over the Pennsylvania National Guard only in times of war. Congress has not declared war since World War II. So they can't do it. If they come in to Montgomery County, come into Pennsylvania, they have to check in with the sheriff. It's the law. They have to check in with the sheriff to present their authority and credentials saying that they can do this. So the EPA or the IRS or the BATF or any of these other alphabet agencies come into Pennsylvania, they got to report to the sheriff first. And if the sheriff lets them in, guess what I have the power to do? Remove sheriffs for cause. And if they're not following their oath, if they're not stopping feds without authority from coming in here, I'm going to remove them. And guess who appoints the replacement? How many sheriffs am I going to have to replace before the feds get the message that they shouldn't be messing around with Pennsylvania? Our students are going to finish their education. Our National Guard is not going to be deployed for some adventurism. Questions? Sorry. Students.
I'm sure this is something you get most often, but what would you say to someone who says a vote for Libertarian is a wasted vote?
The only vote that's wasted is when you vote for something you don't want. Because heaven forbid. I mean, I would rather vote for something I want and not get it than vote for something I don't want and get it. I mean, that's just counterproductive. It's not a wasted vote, because when they see that you voted for them, they're thinking, hey, that's a mandate. This guy agrees with everything I say. And then they go off passing the draft or one thing after another, whatever it's going to be. Voting outside the two-party system, they notice. Trust me, I've been playing around with politics now since 1994, since my first race. They watch. They watch real closely. They watch me closely because they hear that I'm gaining traction. And that's really scary to them. So when they see you voting that way, it's not a wasted vote. You're making a very, very, very loud statement. And let me turn around the other way. I say this at the end of question and answer period, but it directly addresses what you say. People say, Ken, why should I vote for you? You're never going to win. Can win. Thanks to those two old parties. They have alienated so many voters that in a typical governor race, 35% vote. I think we had a peak of like 38%. So what's that? Roughly 1/3 of the people going to come out and vote. Crunch the numbers. I can win if 1 out of 8 voting age Pennsylvanians vote for me. 1 out of 8. That's all it takes. I mean, look at this room. You guys, what do we have here? Let's say, let me just say 24, it's not 24. If 3 of you walk out here saying, that guy Ken knows his stuff, you know, and the rest of you are like, what a crap. That's all it's going to take. 1 out of 8 is all it takes. So that's one reason why you should be voting for me for governor. So many reasons. Nobody else is saying your life your way. And we libertarians, I mentioned this to Mrs. Gale on the way in. I have flyers, and I'll hand them out before we're done here. But on the back is my 12-step plan for Pennsylvania. These are the same 12 steps I ran on in 2002. Exactly the same. A little more detailed, but the same thing. I believe everything since our founding in 1971 hasn't changed today. You can trust the Libertarian. 2 old parties, you got to check. Put a finger to the wind. Oh, taxes are hot this year. Yeah, we're against taxes. No. Now we're in favor of taxes. Oh no, wait, we're against the war. Wait, we're in favor of the war. Obama came in against the war, and he had more troops overseas when he left. Who can you trust? Libertarian, because you know our principles. I was overjoyed to see this when I walked in the door. The Nolan chart. I have met David Nolan, great man. He's passed away now. What I was talking to him about this because I added another dimension to it because there's just not enough room. And the dimension that's missing on that is risk. And that way libertarians don't come out there. It separates libertarians from flower children, from anarchists, and just spreads out the whole thing. I said I was going to do our next.
So, about your proposed plan for penalizing the whatever percent of worst emissions offenders, that would indiscriminately disadvantage people at the lowest income bracket who aren't able to afford newer cars that are lower on emissions. So, is it necessarily fair if it's your life, your way, and someone can't afford a new car to be fining and taking their car off the road when they don't have the opportunity to buy it? So that was my first question.
Well, and we should do one at a time, otherwise it gets a little bit too hairy. Do you think it's okay for them to poison your atmosphere?
I mean, it's everybody's atmosphere.
Do you think it's okay for them to poison our atmosphere?
I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world.
Is that a yes or a no?
I'm not really sure. I think there are bigger
Okay.
priorities than taking their car.
I would not take the car. What they have to do is they'd have to get it fixed, bring it up above that 5% point. And typically, that could just be an air filter. It could be a tune-up. It's not taking their car away from you. What you do is you just get that off the road, fix it ticket, essentially. Because you have the right to live your life your way, provided you respect the rights and property of others. If you're belching out burning oil into the environment, that's not very respectful, is it? I'm all for helping a disadvantage, and that's the point of my novel, is to expand how we can help society. But I would use the power of government to do that.
So my second question about helping society was, before there was specific legislation for disabled children, they were largely disenfranchised from the education system.
Isn't that a damning statement when it comes to our educational system? This is run by those unelected guys in Harrisburg. They don't care. You're right. It's terrible.
But it was written into legislation to protect those specific people, and there isn't really, if you don't have a disabled kid, you're not going to spend money on disabled kids because you want what's best for your children. I mean, that's kind of a human thing. I certainly want what's best for my siblings above necessarily other people's siblings, even if that disproportionately disadvantages an already marginalized group that frequently can't stand up for themselves the way that able-bodied children can. So if that's not part of legislation, how would you protect their rights and their interests?
The question is, how do you do that? What's the best way of doing that? In my opinion, one of the good ways of doing it, or the worst way of doing it, is holding a gun to his head and saying, pay up, I'm going to put you in a cage. That's what I was saying before. We should separate society and state. All these ills that you're saying are societal ills, and yes, we do need to take care of them. However, we don't want to do it at the point of a gun. At least I don't want to do it at the point of a gun. That's why I want to separate society and state. Society can take care of kids like that. Another thing is all the regulation that you guys suffer under here, a lot of that doesn't need to be there, especially when it comes to public needs kids, or special needs kids. You have to stop thinking in terms of, how can I order the school system to be better? How can I make commands to make them be better? How can I set up regulations to make them be better? I'm coming at it the other side. I think individuals making individual choices will far, far exceed what some bureaucrats can do.
Well, what if society decides as a separate organization from government that they don't value certain things the same way? So what if society, as has been seen in the past presidential election, comes up with, you know, more nationalist views, and so they sort of leave in the dust more marginalized groups, ethnic groups, lower income groups, and special needs groups, because society doesn't value prioritizing their rights.
Then I say you have a wonderful future running as the president of society. Because that way, you can campaign for like-minded people who believe in your agenda, and if you can get those passed through society's legislature, they will be funded. We're saying the same thing here, except the question is, who does it? Government with the gun to the head and the your bottomless pockets, or a caring society which really cares about these kids and will spend their dollars frugally, because every dollar they got to ask for. How do you do it? Which way would you prefer? Gun to the head or asking? It's a stupid question, I'm sorry. But right now we're holding guns to heads. I've had friends locked up for stuff like that. I didn't always agree with the way they approached it. Let's see. Did I answer your question? You don't seem happy.
Well, how can, if you ask for my money and I just say no, then you have no funding for people.
No, it's not no funding. I was raised Roman Catholic. And the church and the church schools were all paid for voluntarily. The whole thing. All the nuns that lived in the convent, the priests in the rectory and everything, they built 2 new schools while I was there with voluntarily contributed money. So don't tell me there wouldn't be any. Americans are the most generous people in the world. They gave billions last year. Billions and billions of dollars. What society does, by having society with a written constitution, it organizes that. So people like yourself who care about one particular thing, it now gives you an outlet without feeling in my wallet. Yes, sir.
I was just going to say, I have a question about your worldview, separating society from state.
Sure.
And largely I agree. I think socially it's not the government's business what you do in your own property, what have you.
Correct.
But I do think that there are situations where government may very well have a place in society. So you mentioned like the nanny getting her medicine, or like grandma getting her medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So society should voluntarily give that to her. I agree. But in the event that that does not happen, would you still be against any government intervention, just say like, here's a couple bucks, go get that medicine you need? Or with the draft, even in times of war, where we need a manpower pool, you are against that as well?
I swear an oath to uphold this document. I've already done it. If I step outside of that, if I start doing things that aren't in this, like for example, I have the power now to ban red cars. Ever since Elon Musk, tomorrow, he's launching his Tesla, his red Tesla, he's launching it to Mars tomorrow. At what, 1:30, somewhere around there. Would I step outside and ban his red car? No, they'd say, Ken, you don't have the authority to ban his red car. I'd order the state police, go seize that red car. Well, I'm a bad guy. So you're asking me, would I do something outside the Constitution? Would I be a criminal? Is that what you're asking me?
I'm asking, all right, so I'm assuming you think that the role of government is to preserve rights. Is that
Protect the
correct?
rights and property of the citizens,
Okay.
period.
So you didn't like the draft. let's say we needed a military to defend the country from other people who want to take our rights, and we needed a draft to make it powerful. Would you then support a draft?
I agree with you right on up to the line that you need a draft to make it powerful. Because if we were being invaded, everybody and their uncle would be out defending America. Right? Do you know who was it? One of the
Country.
I'm sorry?
We're very nihilistic people, I think.
I don't know.
At least part of it.
Very
Part of it.
nihilistic people with guns.
Yeah. The people with the guns will protect us all. There was a Japanese guy during World War II. He said, they asked if he was going to invade America. He says, are you kidding? If I did that, there would be a gun behind every blade of grass. Right now in America, there are more guns than there are adults in America. Nobody can invade America without all of those people saying, oh yeah? And that's what would happen. Now, if it's something stupid, like the Vietnam War, I'm sorry if I offended anybody, but I lived through it. Stupid like the Vietnam War. Nobody's going to volunteer for that, although I do know people who did volunteer for it. That's fine. They can go. You know, your life, your way. Even though I don't agree with you. Your death, your way, right? But if it's a stupid thing like that, a buddy of mine up the corner used to date one of my daughters. Now he's in his 30s now. He volunteered to go to Iraq. Blood for oil. I don't know why he went, but you can ask him. I'm off the point again. I'm way out there. But no, I wouldn't. If there was a problem, people would rise to the occasion. If people wouldn't rise to the occasion, then it's not a problem. And we would deserve to be overrun. So if you guys are nihilistic about that kind of stuff, hey, preserve your freedom or not. It's up to you. I've done my part. Yes, ma'am.
So you said you were like a Catholic, so
I was raised Roman Catholic.
So what's your
I'm a
stance on
recovering
abortion?
Roman Catholic.
Oh. Okay. But don't you think that like abortion like is hurting other people? You said about like you can live your own way, but not hurt other people.
I should leave this out. On my 12-step plan, number 8 is defuse the abortion debate. Right now, everything about abortion is black and white, and the press pushes people into those black and white corners. Because that way it makes for better press, more banner ads, sell more advertising. It's all good for them. We can stop it. We can defuse the argument with one little change to the law. Little change. What I would do is I would lobby for a law that would allow for prenatal adoption. That means if a woman doesn't want her unborn baby for whatever reason, anybody could step forward and adopt it while it's still in the womb. Through the privacy of the doctor, ask the woman, listen, somebody wants your baby. Do you want to hold it to deliver the baby? And the adopting parents would pay for it. So right off the bat, there are a lot of babies who are aborted for economic reasons in America, a lot of babies. We just eliminated that reason. We're guaranteed to save babies. And we're preserving a woman's right to choose. Because she can tell the doctor, no, I don't want to go through the trouble of all this. Okay, it's her choice. So the woman has the right to choose, but she can say yes. If she says yes, we're going to save babies. There are other things behind that, too. If she says no, well, tell you what, how about holding on until 6 months, because we still do safe deliveries at 6 months. That way you won't have to get a new wardrobe or anything like that. And she could say, again, yes or no. It's going to be more expensive, because it's a more difficult birth, but again, the adopting parents would pay for that. Would parents step forward? Absolutely. One of the biggest crimes in this country is that there are a vast number of babies, a vast number of people who want to adopt, but they can't get enough babies. So they go overseas. It's cheaper, and there are problems with our adoption laws. You know they can pull back an adoptee after 5 years? He gets a little baby, raise him 5 years, teach him to speak, drive him to kindergarten school, and they take the baby away. But that's a whole other thing. Getting back to the abortion thing. We'd save more babies with just one little change to the law, prenatal adoption. And if the woman says no, keeps saying no, at that point I would turn to technology for a solution. Because we currently do embryo transplants in the animal kingdom routinely. It wouldn't take a lot of research to use those same techniques on humans. There are host mothers out there willing to do the job. Right now it's rare and it's expensive, but it'll become more frequent. Now, it may take 10 years, 20 years, 50 years to figure that out, how to do that. But I see a day coming where we're going to use those techniques to start taking the safe delivery between 0 and 6 months to make it 5 months, 4 months, 3 months, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. It may take 50 years, but I see a day coming when no unborn child need ever die. All we have to do is make one little change to match the supply and the demand. Defuse the abortion for us. You know, I've taken this out to the clinics. You know, here are all the pro-choicers, and over here are all the pro-lifers. And I go to the pro-lifers, I said, listen, here's a way we can save more babies. They love it. I go over to the pro-choicers, here's a way we can preserve your right to choose, and they're going to be happy. They love it. I said, all right, let's get together and talk. Like, no, not those baby killers, Nazis. It's like Solomon said, let it be divided. But I would defuse it. And then after that, the question would just be, what do we do with the mess? Oh, she's got her hand up again. I'll get back to it, sorry.
So, what's your view on illegal immigration in sanctuary cities? Do you believe in, do you believe in deportations at all, or do you believe in deportations of violent criminals, or?
I don't know, you know, I've been over there a lot, and New Jersey, and I don't think we should tear the bridges down. No, seriously. The governor has very, very little say over national, international issues. I don't have the authority to enforce or not enforce federal law. So federal law has immigration laws, and it's in their constitution. We give them that power. They can do that. They enforce it, not me. If I try and enforce federal laws, I'm going to wind up in the same position I was before, where I'm working outside of my oath of office. I promised I wouldn't do that. Now I'm doing it. So there's really nothing I can do. I can't create a sanctuary city. I can't condone a sanctuary city. I can't start. I can't anything sanctuary city. Me coming in here and start enforcing the laws of France on you. Said, oh, you can't wear a burqa or whatever it is. You know, it's not our law. I can't do anything about it. But if I were running, by the way, in 2000, I saw the Libertarian Party's vice presidential nomination. I came in third. Pretty cool. But the question came up then, and the way I wanted to handle immigration is that everybody who's a citizen, 18 years old, can bring one person into the country. Any person, for whatever reason, you get one. And that way no bureaucrat is deciding, saying, oh, you got the H-1Bs. I'm an IT. Everybody on my project is Indian, except for one girl, she's Nigerian. Okay? I can't, as a politician, say, oh, we got to have all these people from this country, all these people from that country. If you feel sorry for the Syrian refugees, use your power to invite one in. You got a second one, go to your neighbors. Hey, have you invited somebody to the country yet? No? Listen, I got a Syrian buddy of mine. You have the right to live your life your way. I don't like government living your life. Forcing you to live your life their way.
Can I have a follow-up?
You can.
You talked about how, with the drug issue, you could use the power of your office to prevent federal authorities from coming in by having them go to the sheriff and have to show their credentials.
Correct.
So would you do the same thing with ICE?
Yes, any federal organization.
Okay.
Stand up to the feds. Nobody's standing up to the feds now. You know, that's where those DUI checkpoints came from. They lowered the blood alcohol to 0.08. That's not a lot. You have somebody my weight, that's, what, 3 beers? How often do I have 3 beers? I had 3 beers on the drive over here now. It's gotten out of hand. I said I'm going to do her next time I had you.
Well, my question about the offering preterm birth is, so right now, at 6 months, we can safely deliver babies, but there's no guarantee that they will be able-bodied babies. They foresee, years down the road, they have developmental issues, pervasive developmental issues.
Sorry I'm interrupting you, but let me just say that I'm an IT guy, not a doctor. I've got somebody pegged who I'm going to do for health education and welfare, and that person will say, Ken, 6 months is not a good number, you should do 7, or 7.5, or something like that.
And secondly, is giving a woman really many choices to just get rid of her baby earlier the same as giving her the choice to, what if I just don't want anyone with half of my DNA out there? What if I don't want to be responsible for putting another person on the planet because I don't agree with it? We've got plenty of people here, and I just want to have an abortion.
Then don't vote for me. Then don't vote for me. And I've heard that argument before. Not an argument, it's really a rationale. And there's nothing I can say about it. If you just want to kill it, you just want to kill it. And you know? Don't vote for me. I don't believe in that. Very good question. Yes, sir.
I have two. One's a quicker one. I'll do that one first. How large is like, do you have like a group of people working with you? Like a staff, not a staff necessarily, but a group helping you on your campaign?
Well, right now, you know, I don't know. My campaign manager takes care of things like that. There are hundreds of volunteers, people who've signed up to be volunteers. There are roughly 50,000 registered libertarians in the state. And then there are a lot of people outside of the Libertarian Party who help us anyway. And I haven't gotten the nomination yet. I'm not the only one running for governor. Everybody's saying, oh, Ken, you're a shoo-in, but I'm not. I'm not that kind of person who rests on laurels and says, this is gonna be easy. No, that's why I'm here today, to talk to you people. Because the more people I can talk to about this, the better off everybody's gonna be. So.
And then my second part was, I'm not positive on the laws of the Constitution for Pennsylvania, but if the legislature of Pennsylvania sees that you're making all these executive orders almost, and they vote to change the Constitution, how would that work? Because then if you can veto that, I'm assuming, but I'm assuming they can also override your veto or call that unconstitutional.
They can.
What do you do when they change it and you can no longer do all of these things with your executive order? Well, doesn't that harm the future of the libertarians who want to do this in the future? If you do all of this at once, I'm for change and making things better. But if you change so much that they make it so you can't change anything anymore, doesn't that hurt your long-term future for your party?
Well, you have to look at it in terms of the process. As you learned in your class on the Pennsylvania Constitution, that in order to get something passed, it has to go through the legislature, be passed, signed by the governor, then it goes on the ballot, the people of Pennsylvania, and then they have to approve it. So typically it's a 6-year process.